peaches into the wine.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cats and dogs, and everybody else, to the first of our V8ESC Backfire podcasts of 2020, and also the first of the new season. As usual, I am joined in the booth by double V8ESC champion Tony Kloosterman. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
And now I can also say double V8 ESC champion Johnny Brandon. Good evening.
Evening.
As you can all
Howdy,
tell
Tony.
people,
Evening.
he's very happy. Obviously, on the wheels of steel, in the background, being as quiet as possible, we have Mr. Sam Boozin. So, guys, we're going to change the running order slightly for this one. What I'd like to talk about first is our new V8 cars. Now, personally, I didn't get much testing in before the new year. You can blame Mr. Thatcher's for that. But I personally, I like it. I think it's still difficult to drive. But the slips and slides and things like that are now catchable for me anyway, whereas before I would just be dead. When the car first came out, it was all singing, all dancing with grip, to the point of grip rolling. I see Tony once in a video. Then, with the usual patches, updates and everything else, iRacing seemed to break the car, bring the car back to life again, break the car again, and so on and so forth. So, starting with Tony, I know you've done thousands and thousands and thousands of laps of testing. So, in your honest opinion, what have we got under our butts now? And is there anything that needs fixing that you can think of?
Well, the car is better than the previous car, and some people may disagree with me, but I think it drives very similar in a lot of respects. Done a lot of testing and have tried a lot of sets. And what I'm finding is that there's no magic formula yet, for me anyways, or for the team. We're looking at PDS sets, VRS sets, and building our own. And there just isn't something that just, what I would say is a go-to as yet. Is there something that needs fixing on it yet? I do believe that the tires need a bit of work. I find that there's some slip on entry in some corners. It's very slight, but once you know it's there, it's something that you can work around. And I think the biggest challenge for most people is just that the tires have so little grip for the first few laps until they've got some heat into them, that the first few laps of either a practice or a race are very, very tricky.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't disagree with any of that. And the other weird thing for me is, the way that the car hasn't got any grip, then suddenly you get some grip, and then it goes off a cliff and then stabilizes for the rest of the run. But that's a bit weird. Johnny, I know you haven't done a lot of testing. Obviously, you've been away gambling your house away in Vegas and things like that. But, with the laps that you've done, how are you getting on with the car? Obviously, you didn't get many laps in on Saturday, but apart from that, how are you finding it?
I'm not going to bite that. I can't make my mind up, in all honesty. I think I'm not finding it as inconsistent as in and out as you guys are saying. I find they get quite a lot of grip early on, and then it's very progressively, slowly drops, and stays pretty progressive. I like the compared to the old one. I like it. I think overall it's better. But the one big problem I've got with it is probably a tyre issue. Is that for me, you can't. If you try and drive this car with the rear end, you get punished. I.e., with tyre wear and degradation and heat. You cannot steer this car with the rear end. It's made it a real front end car, and that's the only. It's a big disappointment for me, but that's what I think they need to change. Whether that's changing the car or changing the tyres, I'm not sure. They could probably do it either way, but that's my gripe with it. But apart from that, I like it. I'm not totally unhappy with it, but I just think they've made it a bit too front end dependent.
Yeah, again, my personal opinion is it's probably, for me anyway, the new tyre model not quite working correctly on this car. I know we've got another update coming. I don't know if they're doing anything to the car again. I see today that's been put back to, I think it was the 4th of February. Adjustment wise, Tony, we've got some adjustments on this car now that we never used to have. Probably most notably the rear wing angle. How are you finding playing about with that? Is there a sweet spot? Have you tried it with next to nothing and plenty of wing on and noticed any differences?
Yeah, I did actually do a lot of low wing testing for Monza, and after a few attempts, I basically threw it out. I haven't found anything under 17 that works. Other people may be running lower wing angles than that, but to be honest, we're running out of top end in some places. At Bathurst, for example, if you used a really low wing angle, and even with the highest gear, you just run out of speed at the end. So we're finding wing angles somewhere between 18.5 and 22.5 to be the norm. One thing, similar to what Johnny's saying, the front end grip is so great that sometimes running more rear wing ends up taking away from that front end grip, and you actually have to run a lower rear wing just to balance the car.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that, because in one of the test sessions that we did, I thought to myself, well, I'll stick a bit more rear wing on it, and I don't know, it just had the total opposite effect to what I thought it was going to do. But Johnny, have you played much with our new plethora of settings that we can play with?
Not really. We've had a little tinker with it, but again, the biggest issue, you can affect the balance with the wing. I'm not sure it's worth going down. It was probably one of the only things we did play with initially, but I think we pretty much use full wing everywhere, mainly for tyre wear, because the rear tyres are so fragile. You can gain pace by doing a lot of things to this car over one lap, but you will pay a price for it if the rear isn't stable, which is, again, what I don't like about the car. I would have thought they would allow a little bit of slip in the rear, but if you have any slip in the rear, you will cane your rear tyres, and it will affect the handling and your lap times massively. So we've kind of left the rear wing alone recently. So yeah, but we haven't tried lots and lots of things, because that's not really what we do. We're trying to get used to the actual car before we start messing about playing with settings.
And what about have either of you guys tried the baseline setup? Because I know, obviously, with the old car, we used to tell people, go back to the baseline. It is quite good to get on with. Is that still consistent with the new car, Tony?
I would say it is, yeah. I ran the baseline exclusively for the first couple of weeks of driving it, and other gear change and perhaps brake adjustment. I think the baseline's pretty solid.
And Johnny, we've spoken in the past about setups and things like that, and you seem to be one of those drivers that settles on a setup and just tweaks it from race to race. Is that still your plan with the new car?
Well, we've used the same setup the last 3 races. We've done 3 tracks, officials, and then Monza. So yeah, probably. We haven't really had a chance to play around with it. Like I say, it's been more a case of driving the car and learning what the car can and can't do before we start really playing around with the setups, because these cars are just quite tricky, because it's not just changing one thing and see what that does. If you change that one thing, that affects another. So you need to change like 4 or 5 things to see what that one change does really, and you need to really understand what the car's doing to get that. So just haven't got the time available to do that, especially not being here. So that might happen a little bit more in the future. Yeah, it's just waiting to see what they actually settle on, because I don't want to spend that much time messing with the car and then iRacing go and update it and change the tyres again. So just giving it a little bit of time to cool off before we get too involved with it.
Yeah,
we haven't
Tony.
heard. Yeah, we haven't heard if they're going to make an adjustment on the car yet, and they haven't given us any indication of what's going on with the next patch. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, if I'm honest, I liked it when it first came out. I mean, all that grip roll, that was only if you hit the curbs, as far as I was aware. So yeah, people should have just stayed off the curb on the first lap. You'd have been all right.
But even on very shallow curbs at low speed, the car could grip roll.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can't disagree with you, although I never rolled the car. But I preferred it when it first came out. I think you had a bit more movement in the car, in the rear, and you could drive it a little bit more like that. Now they've made it a little bit more like the old car.
Yeah.
But the tyres can't live with that movement. Like the rears can't live with that movement. The worst thing you can do is overdrive this car.
Yeah,
and it punishes you more than the old car did. And that kind of takes away where I was masking my inabilities with the front end. And showing my expertise with my rear end. Whee!
Oh, there's one for your diary. And I think, I never tried it when it was super grippy and grip rolling, but I don't think that would have been a problem for me, because I don't carry enough speed into the corners to roll it. So yeah, perhaps we should wind back the clock. And I think, guys, just from our little 10 minutes there talking about setups and things like that, I think once everybody gets a little bit more knowledge around the car, and we're sort of confident that iRacing have finished tweaking and playing, maybe we do another one of our little setup talks, mid-season or something, and try and pass on to the rest of the league, what we've learned, what works and what doesn't work. I'm sure you two will be up for that, and also we can get some of the other guys in that spend a lot of time messing about with setups.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Clyde. Even the fast guys, PDS sets and the VRS sets, these guys can't agree on what's what, because if you take a look at their sets from week to week, they're very, very different. You'll see a PDS set last week at Brands Hatch was a very low camber set, and the VRS set was very, very high camber and high caster. It was unusual.
The VRS, I've given up even looking at the VRS sets, and I don't want to have a pop at anybody in particular, but I pay for VRS. But the VRS set every week looks like the baseline set with a load of caster, a load of camber. That's it. The dampers never get changed.
I noticed that they're not changed.
With VRS lately. It looks like there's very little effort put in that, and that won't last.
Yeah, I did notice that the damper settings are the same every week, and the caster setting this week was like over 20, and the front end felt like a truck.
My advice would be don't use a VRS set. to anybody in the league, purely because I don't think anybody drives it for more than one lap that is making those setups. I wouldn't have thought, looking at it, I don't think there's a lot of time in there for the VRS one. Happy with me if they find out I'm saying that. Don't really care, but I think that's, I would stay away from VRS ones would be my advice for this car at the moment.
Well, that's a good bit of advice for people there. Sorry, just giggling at a comment from Marco. So, leaving the cars aside, let's have a quick chat about the league in general. So, we knew it was going to get busy this season with the new cars. The official racing has been, I don't know what it's like now, but I did watch a few bits and pieces and it was absolutely jam-packed. There's V8 leagues springing up all over the place, and they're all filling up nicely. We opened up 60 slots for our league, and I think my last count we had 57 taken. And then, obviously we had our first racing in anger, well, in Johnny's case anyway, this weekend, and we had 2 grids of 40 plus cars. Now, all 3 of us, obviously Tony did better than myself and Johnny, and just like to get it on record that I actually was better than Johnny, and I've got more points than him. But,
I think everyone has, hasn't they?
I'll start with Tony because I can pretty much predict Johnny's answer anyway. But Tony, how are you finding? I know we've only done 2 races, but how are you finding our increased grid sizes? I know there were some big wrecks at Monza. The track probably didn't help, and we got new people in the cars and that. But on the whole, I actually thought, apart from the 2 big wrecks, the racing was pretty good, even with the big grids.
Yeah, I think that the racing was good once the carnage was out of the way. It's unfortunate that those things happened in the first race, and
to be fair, the carnage
think...
wasn't any new guys, was it?
No,
So
and that's true.
It was 2 of the existing guys.
Yeah, and I know for my part in the first race, I managed to get through that initially, but got tagged shortly thereafter. And but what you saw on the broadcast was some good hard racing by everyone else, and some proper racing, I think, too. There was a couple of incidents here and there, but for the most part, I thought once we were past it, it was okay.
And Johnny, we had a 25-minute race and a 45-minute race. I don't know what you did in total, but probably about 3.5 minutes.
I think that's exaggerating on the high side.
You've raced in series like the World GT and things like that with massive grids of cars and things like that. Do you enjoy the bigger grids, or are you one of those that would prefer 20 drivers that exactly what they're going to do every week?
No, the more the merrier, but I think it depends on the mindset of those drivers to make it work. I don't think you just want numbers for the sake of numbers. That can be dangerous. But there's a lot of guys that know what they're doing in here, and a lot of guys that have been doing it for years with the league. It should work. I hate to say this because I don't think you should ever blame a track. I think it's always down to drivers' decisions and blah blah blah. Possibly the track didn't help as the first round. But then again, there wasn't really that many problems. It looked worse because there was one driver made a mistake and hit me in a fast section, and we were the first in the first 3 cars, and that collected a good probably 10-20 cars behind us. It wasn't really their fault. There was not a lot they could do. So you can't pin it on everybody. Like you say, I think a lot of I didn't see a lot of it, but I think it went okay. And hopefully it'll be great. You know, the more the merrier, 100%. It just needs people to think about it and make it work.
Yeah, you know, I don't like it when people blame the track. I think the start of every new season that we've had, whatever track we've been to, we've had issues, shall we say? But you know, I don't think it's going to be any easier at Suzuka either, because you know it's always been one of them weird, slippery, made out of ice tracks for me anyway. But things do calm down. You know, I say it to everybody. All the messages I had after the races this weekend. You know, I've said to people, you know, just things will calm down, and it always does. So, looking at the races in detail, so sprint race first off, and Nickel Foggy, back with us again, and taking a win. Jake Blackhall from CQR, popping in a second. Another new driver, John Miller, popping in third. So great results for them three guys. But I'm going to go to you first, Johnny, because Rich Warmingham come home in fourth. Now, we know Rich is a fast driver. We know how much he's improved. And then Steve Lavalley popping up in fifth. What's going on there?
Yeah, going well. You know, the guys have been putting a bit of time into the car. And to be honest, I think they could have done better than that. I think Rich definitely had damage from that first incident. So I think he was slow on the straight. I think he was carrying damage in both races. So he didn't do as well as he would have liked to do. And Steve's just solid. You know, Steve's great. All the XVR drivers have been putting some time in, really. Apart from Lane, who's getting old and has to go to bed at 9 o'clock and forgets his name on a daily basis pretty much nowadays. So he hasn't been putting as much time in as everybody else. But Steve and Rich are much improved.
Yeah, and obviously, Lane smells of wee as well. But I can remember talking at the end of last season around the new tyre model. You'd been using it in the TCR car, Johnny.
It's very different.
No, but what I was getting at is you said, I remember you saying that some people will just click with the car and others won't. The improvement with Steve, do you think that's a one-off, or do you think he's clicked with this car and this tyre model?
I think he's clicking with the car and the tyre model. I think it's just, I think further on what we were saying about the new car, I think it's a lot. Not to take away from anything these guys are doing either, but I think generally speaking, it's a lot easier to get on the pace. So to do one lap, I think is pretty easy for most people. What's impressive about Steve and Rich, and I mean especially Foggy, it's not the one lap pace. That what's important in this car is your 20 lap pace. It's the drop off that is the differential between the drivers now. It's not the one lap pace. It's managing the car and the drop off, and that's it's one of the things I don't like about it, because you can't overdrive the car, and that's what it does. It levels everything up. So the more consistent you are and the fewer mistakes you make, the better results you're going to have. It's not necessarily about overall one lap pace. It's going to be a lot more about keeping out of trouble and just plodding along and looking after that car, because everything's going to be a lot closer, because the car is a lot easier to get pace out of, because you can't overdrive the car, so therefore the driver can't really take anything extra out of it. All you can do is maximize every lap, and that's you cannot overdrive, whereas you could overdrive the old car to get a little bit more. I don't think you can in this one. So, and therefore that levels the grid out a lot more pace-wise. So it'd be interesting to see. But those guys really have clicked with it.
Yeah,
They
definitely.
certainly have.
And Tony, sorry, Tony, your NQR team. So just looking at the results of race one, you've got 4 drivers in the top 11. You've got obviously you lost Victor over the winter, and you brought in Jamie McKnight. But in your team, obviously I'm involved with the guys in your team. Greg Carr, although he didn't have wonderful results this weekend, he's another one of those drivers that seems to have clicked with this car and this tyre model, and is practically begging iRacing not to change it anymore.
Yeah, true. First off, I do want to make a comment about Johnny's team and Steve and Rich and the guys there. They've been putting in an awful lot of hard work, and I see them in the official races on a regular basis now, and their pace has increased substantially. So good on them. They've done a really good job in the first 2 months of having this new car model, and their hard work is paying off. For our team, I think that you're right. Greg has come back to life with this car. He's really got a lot of confidence with it, and a lot of people may not know, but when iRacing first brought out the V8s many years ago, Greg was actually one of the better V8 drivers with the old Ford. So he was away from iRacing for a couple of years. Come back, didn't really come to grips with the car we had previously. But this car here, he's definitely goes teeth between the bit, or the bit between the teeth, and is doing very well. And you're right. He's petitioning iRacing not to make any changes to the car whatsoever. He's very happy with it. Good pace out of Anthony as well, and Jamie's a welcome addition to the team. He's had good results in both races, and brings a bit of worldly knowledge to the team, which may or may not help. We haven't
Evolution setup. Sorry.
No, you can say it all you want.
I'm only joking.
This past weekend, only one of our team members used the Evolution setup, and everyone else was using something that was home built. Surprisingly enough, the Evolution setups aren't that different from what we were
we
developing
used
on
to
our own.
get the Evolution setups, and I could never get on with them. It was bizarre.
I think really, we've said it many times before. Setups are not the end all be all.
Driver
And
dependent.
somebody's setup may work for you, and they may not. So, we're excited about our team for this year. Really pleased to be leading the team championship. Thanks, Johnny. And we'll.
Don't thank me. It wasn't me that did it. I could give you some names to thank if you'd like some.
But our main goal this year was team championship, and we're heading in the right direction.
So, and this might just be a total fluke coincidence or whatever, but Greg seems to have got faster since he joined Grinder, or whatever it is he's on now. So, perhaps a bit of under the sheets activity is doing him well. Johnny, you've obviously got Foggy back. We know all about Foggy. And then in your team, new driver to a lot of us, Tyler Newitt. What do you know about Tyler? I know I had a fantastic race too with him, but he's in your team. He's another new guy, somebody that is going to be up there during the season.
Yeah, Tyler's a nice guy. He's been with us a while. He's not necessarily new. He's new to the V8, but we we didn't lose Foggy last year. He just chose to do other things, other series. He was still racing his XVR. But Tyler's been with us. He's based in America. He was doing a lot of GT racing, and gets on where and when he can. I know he's quite a busy guy, he's a nice guy. He's trying to put a bit more time in, wants to get involved with the V8s, but he's very new to it and doesn't have as much time as we all do. And with the time difference, sometimes it can be awkward for him to be on at the same time. But he puts a lot of effort in helping us with various things, with paints and with setups and suggestions for everything. You know, we're a big unit. Nobody's really in charge of XVR. We're all there to enjoy it and help each other and bring each other on. And yeah, he's just another man in the team that's there to be helped and help everyone else. And main goal is to have fun. And with that, I think you naturally get better and better.
Yeah, certainly can't argue with that. So on to race 2. So we had George McClay taking the win, which I believe was his 4th win in the series. Foggy popped in with a 2nd. And NQR's Chris Jackson came in 3rd. Johnny, you know, your race 2 was very similar to your race 1. Tony, 21st, you obviously didn't have a particularly good race. One thing I wanted to ask you about the feature races this year, and we've obviously lengthened the race by a little while and dropped the fuel a little bit. Do you think that the tactical side of the feature race is now going to sort of come to the front, Tony, with the wider pit stop window, shall we say?
Yeah, I believe so. You know, my second race, and I'm going to take full responsibility for my incident with Harold. I was just a little bit too impatient. I tried to go around the outside of him there in the first turn, and I probably should have just let it go, and that's what ruined my race. But strategy for the feature races, I really think, is stay out of trouble if you can, and you know, we do need some luck on our side for that, and then just try and figure out the pit stops. So the window is quite large this week. Could pit as early as, I think, lap 10, and stretch the second one out to 18 laps, or gone 18 laps, or 19 laps, and then had a short stint at the end.
How much fuel did you need?
I think I put in, well,
Was
I
it about
don't know,
14 gallons or something? 13
12,
gallons? 14 gallons?
12 gallons, I think, 12 gallons. But that strategy was kind of ruined with having to do a fast repair early. I do think that the window changes things, and I also think the points for leading laps and the fastest lap changes things as well, because that will impact decisions on who's going to stay out to try and maybe lead a couple of laps, or who's going to short fill and try and get a fast lap in at the end, something like that.
And Johnny, obviously you're a 2-time winner, the same as Tony. Do you think the more tactical races, let's pretend Saturday didn't happen for you, but do you think the more tactical races are going to suit your style of winning championships, or do you think that will help other people get closer to you?
Probably help other people get closer. If there's pit stops, I tend to use a lot of fuel in the old car, and in this one, I think in every car in iRacing, I tend to use a lot of fuel. So yeah, pit stops don't really help me. But it's interesting to have it in there. But I don't think it will help me. I think the strategy with the fuel window, like Tony was saying, there is the window's bigger, but I think because of the tyre wear situation, I don't think you could really. I don't think the options are really that big, which is why most people tended to pit straight away in the middle of the race. And I think you'll see a lot of that. I don't think going longer is going to give you any real benefit because of the way the tyres fall off. It's not like, you know, that you've only got, say, 3-4 laps of good lap times. So whether you take them early or late isn't really going to make any difference. If you couldn't take them earlier than that because you can't get enough fuel in the car to finish the race, and if you took them later than that, you're only going to be catching back up to the guys that you were behind originally anyway, and by the time you catch them, you'll be on the same sort of tyres as them anyway, because it will drop off to that point. So I don't think it's going to be as big a strategy. There's going to be as much variation as there was last season, put it that way. I think it's going to be pretty straightforward, generally speaking.
Okay, and obviously, you know, the other thing we've done this season, as Tony alluded to, is much to Jamie McKnight's disgust, we haven't changed the point system. He will tell you we have, and he's also started riots in Hong Kong and everywhere else because of it. But we tweaked the bonuses and penalties, so we've taken away the bonus for a clean race, and obviously we've started deducting 1 point per incident point. Plus the new iRacing feature.
Really well last week.
Yeah, we put the new iRacing feature in. 15 incident points and you get a drive-through penalty. Had a couple of grumbles about that, but that's mainly from the people that generally get lots of incidents anyway. And then, like Tony said, we've got pole position points for race 1, leading laps, fastest laps, and doing the scoring on Sunday morning. Eventually, after we had a few issues, but it does seem to reward the I was going to say safer driver, but it might just be luckier driver. Just after 2 races, to me personally anyway, it seems like a good change that's happened. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good change. I think that it just adds another element, having points for leading laps and for fastest lap qualifying, etc. And it's I hope it tightens up the standings a little bit.
And Johnny, do you think is there something to be exploited there as a driver if you're say your races where you was smashed all over the place like I was, is it then worth saving that fast repair, taking new tyres and going in and smashing a fastest lap to get some points back that way?
I don't know. I suppose it could be, but you're not going to get that many points back, are you? If it goes as bad as that. I mean, I couldn't take the fast repair in the first. Well, I did take the fast repair, but I couldn't drive because for the first time ever in iRacing, my car was just completely dead after the first incident. No, I don't think it was an engine left inside the vehicle because there was no engine running. So by the time I had the tow, then took the fast repair, I was 2 laps down anyway. So then to go out and try and get, how many points do you get for a fastest lap?
3, I believe.
Yeah, so I go out and get fastest lap, get 3 points, but because I'm 2 laps down, I've also missed a reverse grid for the next race. So because arguably up the front had an incident that I don't think was my fault, my night was completely ruined. So 3 points isn't going to make any difference to me. I see somebody say, why don't you use the fast repairs? I did, and I was still 2 laps down.
But to be fair, those 3 points would have doubled your points tally.
Yeah, exactly. So if, for example, if I did do that, if I had have gone out, got fastest lap, but then I'm dropping that week, do I then drop that fastest lap award?
Yes.
Points?
Yeah,
points per weekend, right?
Yeah. So there was no point in me going out to get a fastest lap then, because 100% that those points for that weekend are hopefully going to be dropped unless I'm worse, but I can't see how that's possible.
Okay, well,
famous last words.
We've obviously got that on YouTube, so we can always replay that later on in the year when you get smashed again. Obviously, we didn't have a V8 ESC lap record because we've never run that layout before. And the tow was pretty massive. But just a shout to Josh Chin, who did get our new lap record with a 133.2. So I will. I'll start with Tony because Johnny's the procrastinator. Driver of the meeting, Tony.
Foggy, hands down. He had a second and a first. And honorable mention, Jake Blackhall had a fifth and a second there. There was some good drives, quite honestly, in both races.
And Johnny, what about you?
I'd say Foggy and Steve Lavalley impressive, but Jake Blackall, new coming in, did very well. Joshua Chin, I think there was a lot of good driving in there. I think the top 10 was shaken up, especially in the first race because of the incident. A lot of the front runners were taken out. So it's going to be really interesting the next round. But yeah, just the usual names. Probably Foggy, so dominant and keeping out of trouble as always. Steve, but yeah, that's XBR drivers, so you can ignore me. Yeah.
Okay, so I've sort of decided this season that yes, if you look at results, Nicole Foggy is had the best results of the season, but I'm going to look further down the grid. And my driver of each meeting is going to go to somebody who I think probably batted above their average. So my driver of the meeting this weekend would be Steve Lavalley. If he carry on getting those results, he's not going to win it again. But Steve is. I thought he had a couple of really, really good results. But as Tony mentioned, with an honorary mention, I'm going to give this to one of our own, one of our admins, somebody that's been with us right from the start, and that's Mr. Dave Jansen. And purely because, and Tony will back me up here, we've had nothing but bitching, moaning, and complaining from Dave about this new car and how he can't drive it and how he's given up. And then he has another practice, and then he says it's still shit and he's not enjoying it and all the rest of it, everything else that anybody else can say. And then I had a quick chat with Dave on sort of Saturday lunchtime, and I said to him, "Look, you just need to get in, do laps, and see what you can do." And I think Dave started from the pit lane in both races, and got a 13th and just trying to find him in the second
14th, 13th and 14th.
14th. Yeah. So yeah, my honorary mention is going to go to Mr. Dave Jansen this week. Right. So post-race bitching.
Well, there was a lot of that.
Driving standards. I don't think there was a lot of post-race bitching. There was some in-race bitching, which those involved have already apologized, which is what we asked for. We do ask people to keep their fingers off the button, and there is a bit of a conversation going on in the suggestion channel about whether we ban chat at the moment. So that's sort of developing, but post-race bitching, we put that in mainly for the abuse that people were getting on Discord and trying to stop that, and I don't think there was any of that. And I'm not really going to go into the standards yet because it's very early in the season. We'll leave that till after the next one. So I've purposely not got any guest drivers or any guests in tonight because I knew we was going to have a chat about the new cars and the new season. So let's move it on to Suzuka in 2 weeks' time. Personally, a track that I really dislike. I find all of the Japanese tracks are just super slippery.
Then why the hell did you put it on the schedule?
I don't know. Cider, I reckon. If I just picked tracks that I liked all the time, then we'd be at Daytona and Watkins Glen every week. No, actually, I wouldn't. I'd stick Spa in there because I know Tony hates it as well. Yeah. So Tony, Suzuka for you, a track you enjoy, a track you don't enjoy, you think you can improve your results, Suzuka from last weekend?
there's nowhere but up from last weekend. Suzuka, not a track I'm particularly fond of. Did laps there this morning. I hosted a session, and George and Chris and myself spent an hour there trying the new car. George proved quick right out of the box, 2:01.8, or sorry, 2:02.8, I believe his time was. So, and world record time at Suzuka for the V8 is in that same range. So, I find it a little slippery, as most of the Japanese tracks are. And in an hour of testing, I didn't come away with anything solid. I'll say that. Temps, Marco, the track temperature was 98 Fahrenheit at 9:50 a.m. in the morning. So it was a morning session, clear skies. It was a little slippy, but I think what we're probably going to see is some 201s once guys figure out the track, and I have nowhere to go but up. I had a poor result there last year too. I think I had an extra pit stop just due to fuel last year, so this will be a little different this one around.
And Johnny, what about you? Is Suzuka somewhere you enjoy?
I think so. I'll let you know in 2 weeks. It's not somewhere I dislike, so quite looking forward to it. But I haven't tried it yet, so I don't know. But yeah, I'm not going to say it's going to be better than last week. We'll see what happens.
Surely it can't be worse.
As a track layout, I like it, so it'd be interesting.
To be fair to Suzuka, a lot of people say that if you can set a car up for that particular track, you can use that as a basis for almost any track on the system.
Yeah, I think that's probably where my trouble is. I can't set a car up for any track. One other thing I wanted to touch on is, again, change to the league this year in our support series. So last season we did the sprint series, where we found ourselves racing every Saturday, a bit hectic. This season we've gone totally in the other direction, and come up with an endurance series of 2-hour races. And they're held once a month, over a 10 or 11 month period. Now, Johnny, obviously you was away in Vegas or just got back and was knackered, but Tony, you raced in it. What do you think to that format?
Yeah, I like it. I think that the most important thing for everyone is it gives you seat time. So 2 hours of racing, you get to understand what happens to the car during fuel run, and it's a little bit more informal. Hopefully, we have some more people out for the next one. I know the official 24 hours was going on the same day as our event, so hopefully we have some more people out for Spa. The one thing I'll say about Spa, though, is that we may see some people with negative points at the end of it. It's a very high 1X incident track, so people will have to be mindful of that because 15 incidents is a drive-through, right? And at Spa, that can be very, very long time.
2 laps at Spa for some people. That I tell you.
And Johnny, I say you missed the Daytona race, but is the Endurance Championship something that you're looking to drive in?
Yeah, I'll definitely do a few. I didn't know the next one was Spa, and I'm not a fan of Spa because of the off tracks, but really because people use the off tracks to go quick, and it makes such a big difference.
Yeah. Did you notice that the off tracks
thing, then it should negate it?
Johnny, did you notice that the off tracks seem to be a lot tighter at Monza?
No, I think no. I mean, I didn't really do any driving. I had 12.
Well, that's true. You
turn
didn't do
2
enough
of race
laps
1, and I had 12 by turn 1 of race 2.
But in the Lesmos, the 1Xs for going just slightly off track, I thought were very pronounced.
Yeah, I think that's new because you used to be able to run up on that green AstroTurf no problems. But
No, I think
Yeah.
you can get. I think it's always been half the car. But the difference is, I think, because you're doing the drive-through at 15, you're taking note of them. I think you just accept. The first couple of practice laps I did around Monza there, and I have to say I loved that layout when I was driving it on my own. The second Lesmo, that was quite tricky. That was the one where I was getting them every lap, getting a 1x every lap. I was like, hold on a minute. But when you realise they matter, you have to just adjust it a little bit. And it was just half the car over the white line.
was that entry or exit?
Exit, exit.
Yeah, exit. But
Always.
at Ascari, they give you like half a mile without getting 1x there.
Yeah, on the exit especially, you could go right off as long as you didn't touch the grass. On the way in, you could take half of that curb on the way in, couldn't you? At Ascari. It was definitely the two Lesmos, but I quite like that because it can make a big difference. You know, if you just straight line it and go right out over the AstroTurf there, you can gain substantial time. So I think, especially in special events and things, I mean, you're looking at teams clocking up 1,000 incursions somewhere like Spa and Monza. It's people just take them. I think because of the drive-through, I think you'll noticing them a bit more because the penalty's there, so you have to keep an eye on it. Especially if someone it only takes 2 people to hit you. You got 8 already. You haven't got a lot of leeway then. So I think that's a good change to the league. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
I think Ant Woodward can clock up 1,000 in about 3 corners, so you ain't got to worry about that. So we've covered the racing side of things. We always talk about iRacing news. I don't think there's a great deal about. I've not really heard anything on the grapevine. I think we've had the BMW GT4 announced. Prick anybody's interest?
No.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the GT4s. They still haven't released the Porsche Cayman GT4, but I'm looking forward to that as well. GT4s could be quite good. So yeah, the more cars there are in one class, great, because it's a new class. To have 2 different options would be good. They need another TCR as well, but 2 GT4s should be good. It's just a case of when they arrive.
Track wise, I've not heard anything. Either of you guys heard anything?
Word.
Nope.
No, there doesn't seem to be a lot of news going about at the moment, and obviously we've got the hot fix of the hot fix of the hot fix of the hot fix coming up. But as yet, I don't think there's any details on that. So moving on to league news, and I know we've covered a bit of it so far. For the people that are listening to us live, and also the people that watch it back on Dave, guys in the UK will get that one. Work is still going on. We've had some teething problems with our scoring system. We still have some teething problems that we're working through. But I think on the whole, the new website looks fantastic. It's easy to navigate. There's a lot of information on there. Daft things like you may not have realised so far. If you want to check the how you got on in individual races, if you go into that series, click on the poster for that race, and then scroll down, you'll see all your points and penalties and things like that. So work still continues. I've got to thank Sam for that. He does the majority of the work on the website. I do the majority of the breaking of the website for Sam to put right again. And apart from that, league news wise, we're start of the season. There's not really a great deal going on. So unless Johnny or Tony, you've got anything to add?
I got a question. So, without naming names or anything else, were there many protests from last week? People not interested to hear?
No.
No.
No, there certainly wasn't. And if I say we had two, you'll probably know who they were from.
Okay, right, yeah, from me.
And just to let everybody know what we're going to do this season is we're going to have a protest page. So once we get the protests in, we will put them up on the page, and you can see the outcomes from our stewards. Now we understand that, and I'm not. This isn't at you, Johnny. In the past, people do not agree with some of the decisions, but I will faithfully stick with the three stewards. We have a system in place. There is a document which is on the Discord channel from the 11th of January that tells you how to protest and how we handle them. And how we come up with penalties and warnings and things like that. That is also going to go onto the website and also going to go into the rule book. The stewards look at the incident, they look at what happened before, they look at what happened afterwards, and they make an honest appraisal of what they think happened in that situation. Now, you won't always agree with it, but just to be blunt, it's going to be tough shit. And all of you that have done real racing in any way, shape, or form will know that, arguing with the stewards invariably gets you absolutely nowhere. But yes, that's the way we're going to do it this season. If it doesn't work, we'll change it for next season. But for this season, that's what we're going with. So, guys, are we ready for the barrage of Pete Bingham questions?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the moment we have 8 questions, and they are all from Pete. So, first one, Johnny. I think you've already answered this. Did you not have a quick repair like the rest of us? I didn't see you race after either incident.
Yes, I did have quick repair. Race 1, my engine was dead, so by the time I towed back to the pits and was able to use it, I was already 2 laps down. And then come under attack as a lapped car, shall we say, and was getting in people's way, so decided to stop because I was already 2 laps down. Therefore, my race 2 was already ruined, so there was no point. And then in race 2, I used the fast repair after my start line hit up the back. Destroyed me again, cost me 2 seconds a lap. I used the fast repair at the pit stop, which I pitted at the earliest time, having driven after race 2 seconds off the pace, only for someone to rejoin in front of me and kill my car again straight after my pit stop, and the fast repair was gone. So yes, I used them both.
Excellent. Thanks for being honest. So again from Pete, and I must admit, I am absolutely 100% convinced that this is right, but you guys might know the technical reasons. Why does it feel easier to catch what would have been a crash in the last car? Tony.
I noticed that myself, and it was very apparent in the first turn at Monza, where if the car got a little bit sideways, you could actually catch it. I think that the iRacing suspension model is a little bit more forgiving this time around, and we don't get that snap over steer that happened in the old car.
And Johnny, obviously, same question to you, because in the old car, at my lowly talent level, once that back end started going, it didn't matter what I did. I could brake, I could accelerate, I could steer into it, I could steer away from it. There was absolutely no way I was stopping it. But this car, it just, I don't know if it reacts quicker to steering inputs or something like that. Have you noticed it, or
I think it's just higher grip levels. So I think it's just higher grip levels in the tyres. Allows you to catch it, and it seems to be, it lets go a little bit more progressively, so you have a little bit more warning. Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's easier to catch or not. I think you're also running higher cambers than you were in the old car. in this car,
Yeah, for sure.
generally
Yeah.
speaking. So that also aids that. I think it's just the nature of the car. The car's just easier to drive. So
I think Johnny's
on
right.
that edge.
Yeah, I think he's right. It's more progressive, whereas the other car was definitely a snap type of oversteer.
Okay. Pete's third question, I think we've already sort of spoken about and answered. Massive grid the other day, good or bad, racing for the fast guys. I think I suppose it depends on how lucky you are.
Yeah, don't know.
My take on it is, race one, sprint race with a qualifying session. The fast guys are going to be up the front anyway. But race two, there's more chance of the fast guys either being caught in an accident or, they've got more cars to drive past, I nearly said through, before they get up into the big points. But then, I think Foggy started 30 something in that race and still got up to second. So
I think a lot of people took themselves out in front of it. I mean, he is bloody good anyway. I think he's nigh on impossible to stop, even if they didn't. I think a lot of the fast guys, myself included, are going to find it really difficult to get through in reverse grids compared to last season, because I think the car is inherently easier to drive, and the gap between everybody is a lot smaller. So especially like last season, when you'd get like Tony, myself, we'd be right up the front end within 2-3 laps. That's not going to happen this season, I don't think. I think the fast guys are going to really have to pace it and come through on the tyre life when the mid-range guys are pushing and using their tyres up at the start. The fast guys are going to have to wait for them to get through that grip and then go later on. I don't think you can. I don't think the fast guys are going to be able to go through. I think Monza's a bit of an anomaly. I think it was probably flattering to some people and took away from others because the slipstream's so powerful. It's going to be really interesting when we get onto Suzuka. Definitely will be an interesting indication of where people are at and how things are going to work. But I think it's going to be a lot harder for the quicker guys to get through the grid. With you could go full attack, but you'll kill your car, and you're just going to be so vulnerable. You'll kill your tyres, and that you'd be mullered for the second half of the race. So it's that side of it will be really interesting, and that plays onto an earlier question, I think, with is there a way to play the points? I think there might be. I think the guys that are finishing 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, race one, getting up there and finishing 5th, 6th, 7th, race two might be a better way to go. I think you could probably have a real good championship, if not win it, by doing that most of the season.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that.
I don't think there's any. I don't think there's any incentive to win everything. I think winning race one is going to be bad news for you in race two. And bear in mind the points are double in race two, which is why I don't like that the way those points are done. I think winning race one this year is going to be bad news, especially at certain tracks. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see.
And Tony, interesting what Johnny was saying there, and I do fully agree with him about maybe the faster guys coming through in the feature race are going to have to wait for the mid packers and so on and so forth to use some of their stuff up and show a bit of patience. Just to stir the hornet's nest a little bit, you're not always known for your patience when overtaking. Is that something that you're going to have to work on, or are you, just going to be the normal Tony Kloosterman, and if there's a half a gap, you're going to make it a full gap?
I've put a lot of thought into this actually before Monza, and I think that one of the things you have to do is practice a little bit of patience. I didn't exhibit it on the weekend, so it bit me in the ass. But I agree with Johnny. I think that the positions will be picked up more around lap 9 to 15 than the way it used to be, where the positions were picked up in the first 3 laps. And part of that will be tire management, and some of that will just be setup related, because some setups will burn the tires up a little bit faster than others. And then I'll go back to my earlier point. I think some pit stop strategy can influence your positions, because maybe an early pit and get 2 or 3 fast laps in while the tires are decent with a clear track can help. Because at the end, when the tires fall off, they fall off to a certain point, and then they stay the same for 10, 15 laps afterwards. We did 28 laps at Brands Hatch in the official this week, and after lap 12, the laps were pretty much consistent right to the end. In fact, go ahead.
Sorry, Tony. I'd agree with that. Apart from the fact that I think it's the fuel that is limiting that strategy, because I couldn't pit any earlier than halfway because of the fuel limitations. I couldn't fit the amount of fuel I needed to take in the car until half race distance.
Yeah, I find that unusual, but
so,
like you say, you use a little bit more fuel than others. And
the other guy, Steve, was the same. Richard was the same. It was only Foggy that was using a little bit less, and I think he still took 13 gallons. So
yeah,
I think we were all there, and I had damage for the whole first half of that second race, so I wasn't using as much fuel as I would have done if I didn't have the damage. So yeah, maybe yours was put out of sync a little bit because of your stop for the fast repair early on. I don't know, but I think the fuel was quite limiting to the strategy as opposed to the tyres. I think 100% agree it would make sense on the tyre strategy to pit earlier, 1000%. But I think the fuel is the limiting factor.
So
okay. Well, I'm going to disagree, because my calculation was a minimum of 11.5 gallons and a maximum of 13 gallons, depending on draft. And on the draft, we were on track for an 11.5 fill.
So just interested on that fuel. I'm a slower driver than you two. Johnny seems to use more fuel than Tony. My pit calculations were earlier stop, exactly what Tony said earlier, actually. Earlier stop was lap 10, and I had to take a minimum of 12 gallons, I think it was. How much does... What makes that fuel difference between drivers? Is it pure driving style, or can setup? I know gear ratio can, but I would presume everybody was running the same gear ratio.
I don't think gear ratio does a lot.
Can setup change the fuel?
Nope. The limiting factor in fuel is the amount of time you have your throttle at 100%. iRacing makes their calculations based on that. So if you can keep it off of the 100% mark, you'll save fuel.
I use the throttle a lot. I don't think... Is it just on it can't be just on 100%.
Pretty much.
I thought it was any throttle use, because I ride the throttle a lot. So basically, as soon as I'm off the brake, I'm on the throttle. And that's a big difference between me and Foggy. Whereas we're 100% throttle, a similar amount. But as soon as I'm off the brake, I'm on the throttle, which is a habit I've got from real life. I do very little rolling, even if I'm just touching the throttle, just very slightly. And I think that's where I lose all my fuel. And playing to steer the rear end with the throttle, which I'm trying to stop doing, but I still get on the throttle. I find
have to review that Talianich video again.
Yeah, I just can't do it. So I've done it for 20 odd years in real life. It's just a habit I can't stop myself from doing.
Well, that's an interesting twist on things anyway. We all know Mike T is the world champion fuel saver, but it'd be interesting to see what his thoughts are on on the fuel saving.
If I go into fuel saving mode and deliberately roll off on the straights, I can do it. But under normal circumstances, I'm on the power very, very early, not going full throttle, just using the power to steer the car. And from the way into the corner, as soon as I'm off the brake, I'm on the power. And I think that's where I use more fuel. I think it's any throttle use at all is what uses the fuel up in the car.
Okay, so next question from our Pete Fest, and again, I think we sort of touched on this earlier on, and I could be wrong, but I think you guys might be at opposite ends of the spectrum here. Is this car going to require a truly unique setup for each race, or just tweaking a good stable setup for each track? And I'll start with you, Tony.
We're making track-specific setups. I think it's too early to tell, actually. I think that we're way too early in trying to figure out the car to determine whether or not we need different setups for every track, or if there's going to be much difference between every track. I think Johnny mentioned that they're using, basically the same setup for 3 races now, and our team's just trying a wide variety of things.
Johnny, you stick to that philosophy of just tweaking a set between track.
Yeah, and I don't even think we've tweaked it on 2 of them. I think it's exactly the same setup as we used at another one of the tracks. Yeah, I don't think I understand the car. We understand the car enough to be doing things. It's something we would like to do and get more into. But it's hard because, like I said, we've found you can make changes to make the car quick, but you pay a price for that pace, that early pace. You will pay a price for it down the line in the race with the loss of grip and the drop off in the lap times. So we've found somewhere that we're comfortable at the moment with that, and we're kind of sticking there until we understand a little bit more of how that works and what's affecting it. Some places it might be great, some places it might not be so great. And handling isn't ideal everywhere. There's things we like, and some of the drivers don't like it and do like it. We're just all having to kind of live with it at the moment until we get a bit more time to start playing around and get on the same page. But we've used the same setup for the last 2 official races. Well, no, for the media day, for the official week in between, and for this, has all been on the same setup.
And one thing I think I'd like to say here, and I've said it many times, somehow I don't think it always gets through, and that is that if you're going to practice and work on setups on this car, you need to do at least 5-lap stints with your setup to understand what the car is doing on lap 3, 4, and 5, because the tires have to come up to temp before you can even think that you need to make a change to setup. So if you're going out for 2 laps and say setup's rubbish, you're really doing yourself a disservice.
Plus, on top of that, I completely agree with that. But on top of that, you also need to be extremely comfortable with the lap, because
yes, yeah.
How can you tell that you're going right? Oh, I made a change. Oh, I'm 3 tenths quicker. Yeah, but that's because you've just done another 5 laps, whereas you only did 5. But you're still learning the track.
Yeah.
So until you are proficient with the car, with the track, there is absolutely no point in making a change to see if it feels any better, and then looking at the lap time delta to tell you whether that's better or not. Because I've done it myself. You do that, and you're convinced you've made the car a second a lap quicker. Reset the setup back to where it was when you first joined the room, and you'll go 7 tenths quicker than that again. It's just you're just learning the track still. So yeah, all those things. Hence, we don't play around with it a lot.
Yeah, Marco just mentioned 10-lap stints, and because the last 5 laps matter. And I'm going to agree. When we did testing for Brands Official last week, we were doing race distance testing before we were making changes on the setup, because we wanted something that would last the entire 28 laps at Brands.
Yeah, so maybe start with like a 10 laps default car setup and just get used to it. Then go and do another 10 laps and sit with exactly the same default setup and see if you improve. if you don't start improving, then you know you're used to it and you've stopped making mistakes. Then it's time to start doing 10-lap setup runs and checks. So it's
And
not
the other
really.
thing is make sure you're doing all your testing in the same type of weather and track conditions. That's critical.
So I think the answer really to Pete's question is we have absolutely no idea at the moment. Next question. I know Tony's been doing a lot of officials. I was interested just to learn then that Johnny's done at least one. How does the official racing measure up to how it was before? Has it gained anything? It's obviously gained people, but I'll start with you, Tony, because I know you've done a lot of it. Is it just people that it's gained, or is it people and madness, or is it people and people driving nicely? Is it better?
Certainly, participation's up. First couple of weeks was very high. It's dropped off a little bit, I'd say, in the past 2 weeks. But I think overall, the racing is pretty good. We always have fellows come in that have never driven the car before, and there's going to be some incidents. But for the most part, I'd say the racing has been reasonably clean. The fast guys are always going to be the fast guys, and they're going to race each other very, very hard, as we've seen in a couple of events. But it's been good, I'll say.
And Johnny, so you've just mentioned that I know you've done at least one official race. How are you finding?
Yeah, did a few before I went away. Haven't done any the last couple of weeks, and I actually tried to do some today, but there was nobody signing up. So I don't know whether we're suffering in Europe with the participation now. After the initial release, people have run off to the BMW 120s thinking they can suddenly beat everybody and win some prize money or something. I don't know where everybody seems to have gone in the European ones, but
Or
the
maybe
participation seems lower.
maybe the changes in the car have put people off.
Don't think so. I think generally speaking, people are lazy. They like GT3s, easy grip. Which that's why they're popular. I think if something's hard and they're not on the pace, they give it up pretty quick. So yeah, I don't know what it's like tonight. I could have a look now quickly if you like. But I tried to race this afternoon, and there was literally nobody signing up for the races, and one person in a practice room. And as we speak now, there's nobody in a practice server whatsoever.
And what is the official track this week?
We're going to
It's changing for next week. Yeah,
Daytona Road.
There'll probably be more in that. I might even have a go at Daytona Road.
God help us.
Well, yeah,
that
I've got
might
to keep
be
my winning streak up.
The officials.
So the next in the Pete Fest is it bin it or win it for the fast guys this season? If I crash, I am not rejoining because I don't have the opportunity to win. I'm like, I just plod on whatever, but I'm not a fast guy. Johnny, you've sort of explained your mishaps.
Yeah, and I don't know whether that's aimed at me, but
I think
the
so.
only reason I didn't carry on in race one was because I had people shouting at me, telling me I was getting in the way. So I decided to pull off the track because there was nothing for me to be gained, and I was getting in people's way. So I got out of it. In race two, I carried on until my car got destroyed, having driven half the race, 2 seconds off the pace per lap, and then again through no fault of my own, have the car destroyed again. Fast repair was gone. There was no point in me carrying on. The car wouldn't have been repaired before the end of the race, so I stopped. It wasn't a case of giving up. I just want to race. I don't care where we are. And as XVR, we want to race cleanly. None of us want to race and win anything with any contact or all or nothing. We're not into it for that. We're into it for clean racing, and that's what matters. Winning or second, third, 10th, 20th, it'll be what it'll be. That your pace is your pace. It'll end up how it ends up, but we're all about doing it cleanly and enjoying it. That's the important thing for us.
And I also think with the talent that we've got in the league this year, every point is going to matter at the end of the season. But Tony, I think you're a bit like me, albeit a lot quicker and a lot older. It doesn't seem to matter what mishaps we have. We get the car fixed and we get out and we turn laps and just try and, just gain as many points as we can. I'm presuming that'll be your attitude for the rest of this season and forever.
That's generally my attitude, anyways. And if something does happen untoward that puts you in the back, I think it's still a lot of fun going through the field, and it's good practice. So you learn some racecraft every time. You learn something about all your competitors and how they race you, and so it's a learning experience for me.
Okay. The next one from Pete, and we'll throw Marco's question into this as well because it's one of the same thing. So Peter said, when the car makes contact with anything, do you guys think the car just folds like cheap tinfoil? And Marco has said, do you think the car picks up damage more easily now? Personally, yes, I think it does. I've had some very light scrapes and got the meatball flag. Johnny, you had lots of experience at crashing on Saturday. Well, as did Tony. iRacing have gone on about the new damage model and things like that. Has it gone too far?
Well, first of all, the TCR's got there was talk of the TCR with the new damage model, but it was a new car, and that thing is a tank. It is very hard to damage it and have any effect on your lap pace. Whereas this new V8, like you say, you brush somebody, you could either get away with it or you can be 2 seconds a lap slower. It's real pot luck, it seems to me. And I'm pretty sure in another race I did, I can't remember if it was an official or I think it might have been an official, but you can had a real small contact with somebody side by side and they give me a meatball flag. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with the damage on the new V8. It doesn't seem right to me. I don't think it is the new damage model either because we're not seeing bits falling off the cars as far as I'm aware. That hasn't come on it. I might be wrong.
No, I noticed that visually that the damage seems
it looks exactly the same as
the old
model.
car.
Yeah.
You lose your bonnet or you lose your boot and your wing.
Yeah, I don't think it's got the actual new damage model applied yet. But
No, I don't think so either.
the damage that's on there seems, like I say, compared to the TCR, if you put the TCR in here and weaved across the track and not let a V8 past you, that TCR would be the last car standing. It would wipe out the V8s. It is a tank. It is nigh on impossible to destroy that car. And that hasn't got the new damage model of bits flying off either. So quite why they've made this one as fragile as they have, I don't know.
And Tony, I've had an experience in the new car where I've been punted on the right rear. My spotter has said you've got wheel damage. So definitely something weird going on.
Yeah, it's kind of hit and miss. It always would give you a meatball if you clock the front tires on either side. So Bathurst was a really good example of that. I think we see more visual damage to the cars now than we ever did, and I also think side by side, in most cases, the cars are not as there isn't as much damage caused when cars are side by side and touching each other. So before, when a car was side by side and we touched each other, we would automatically spin off into oblivion. And I think it's a little more sturdy that way when it's just a little bit of rubbing. But certainly there seems to be this meatball issue that happens very randomly, and it's a bit frustrating.
Yeah, I think the side-by-side things are a bit more random. I think sometimes you can get away with it, sometimes you don't. And all right, they don't bounce and fly off each other
Yeah,
like before,
not
but
as
if
much,
one
not
car
as
can
much
get
as
completely
before,
crippled,
right? Yeah.
yeah, and one car can get away with it completely clean. So it's, yeah, I don't think it's right at the moment, but
I think
you
it's a
know,
work in
don't hit each other,
progress.
guys. Don't hit each other. There's no problem.
Yeah, that's the answer.
Exactly.
Easy.
Give
That's
each
that one
other
solved.
space.
Right. So, final question at the moment. And again, I think we touched on it earlier, and I've got a little thought on this. Peter said, do you think the new rules on incidents will inspire safe driving or create a much more obvious void between the talented and me, as in Pete? Is it good for the league in terms of people feeling like they've accomplished something or not? My take on it is I don't think it will inspire safe driving. I think, as we sort of see at Monza. However, it will penalise those that the only blunt way of saying it is take the piss on track limits, I suppose. What do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, agreed. It's a lot of tracks are very easy to take a 1x and gain 3/10 in certain corners. This should negate that to a certain extent. It'll be very interesting. I mean, I remember a couple of seasons ago we were racing and there was people winning races with 38 incursions and things, because it was just quicker. And they'd win it on the broadcast and then get deducted points, but it didn't matter because they won the race. So I like the drive-through idea. I think it's good. It's not perfect because if somebody hits you up the back a couple of times already, you got 8 incursions. Somebody does it again, you might not go off track once. If someone taps you up the rear a few times, they could give you a drive-through. Arguably, they get one themselves, but it opens it up to unfortunate situations. But I think it's better to have it than not have it. It'll be interesting.
I think what they really need to do is that they should display how many incident points you've got on the back of your car, so that if you come up behind somebody and it says 14, you can finish them off. Tony, what about from you? We spoke about Spa earlier, and how easy it is to pick up incident points there. I know you was privy to a conversation that I had with Ant Woodward about the penalty system, and also I remember Johnny talking the back end of last season a particular track that I can't remember. And Johnny specifically said, if you're willing to take the incident points, you can gain half a second a lap. Do you
Spa
think?
is definitely one of those.
Yeah. Do you think, Tony, that? Obviously the fast drivers who want to win the championship and get good results are going to have to take notice of it. But do you think it will help the league in general?
It should, but I think that's entirely dependent on the drivers themselves. And I think hopefully everybody got Monza out of their system, and we say this after the first race of every season.
We do.
We do. Hopefully they got it out of their system, and they're here to race going forward. I think Spa, if people disregard track limits at Spa, they're going to finish in the 40th to 50th position because you're going to have a couple of drive-throughs. It's there's just no two ways about it. That track is very, very tight on track limits, and it won't take long to get a drive-through. And at Spa, the drive-throughs are rather long. So I think that maybe Spa will calm people down a little bit. I hope that it does, and that we end up with some good racing.
Excellent. So that finishes off our Pete Fest for the night. And I hope you guys that are watching, commenting, and those watching back at a later date. Appreciate the honesty from these two guys. It's not always easy being put on the spot with some of the questions, but you ask them, and these guys answer them. So thanks to them for that. So we've been going for an hour and a half, guys. Time to wrap up. I'll start with Johnny. Anything else you would like to mention before we go?
Not really. Other than please don't hit me in the next round. I'd like to finish more than a lap. Goes to everybody in the league. And interested to see what happens with my lonely protests. Yeah. Looking forward to the next one. I feel like I haven't raced in the V8s for about a month now after that.
Yeah, so we've got Suzuka. I think off the top of my head, for some reason, I've got the 29th of February. And we got 3 races on the trot then, because obviously it will be the sorry, it's not the 29th of February, is it? I'm talking absolute rubbish. 5th, yeah. And then towards the end of the month, obviously we get the endurance series again. So plenty of racing coming up. Tony, anything else you would like to bring up before we go?
I'm surprised nobody mentioned how civil Johnny and I were with each other today.
Well, I think, to be fair, normally it's you two door banging, but you was at opposite ends of the track. So yeah, there's. I'm sure there'll be some needle going on through the season.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've got a decent group of people that are going to race this year. Hopefully, we see some more people at the next one, and that the racing is perhaps a little cleaner, especially on the starts. It'll be better for everybody,
Yes.
and it'll be better for the broadcast as well. I did notice that the Apex guys were having a bit of an issue keeping up with all the different battles, because the more cars you do have, the more interesting some of those battles are through the field. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle the next event.
Yeah, they'll certainly have to earn their money this season. Let's see if Sam's still awake. Sam, anything you would like to bring up before we go? We'll get him to type that next time so you can understand it. So, people, so we've been prattling on for an hour and a half now. So just leaves me to close the show. I'd like to thank Johnny and Tony, A, for turning up, as they usually do, and B, for their honesty. Sam, for doing all the work he does in the background, not just for the podcast, but everything else, and running his own series. Racetech, you guys, we're very, very privileged to have a sponsor like yourselves on board. Hopefully everybody saw my post in the Facebook channel. Racetech were actually at the Daytona 24 and commented on how many of their seats were in the cars. Something I witnessed firsthand last year at a British GT race, when myself and David, the MD, did an impromptu pit lane walk, counting all the seats in the cars. So yeah, brilliant for them. And thanks to all of our past and present drivers, so you guys that come back season after season after season and put up with us, and to all of our new drivers for helping us to grow the league. Hope you all stay with us, and hope to see you all at Suzuka, hopefully in my mirror, although I don't think so. So yeah, on that note, we'll close the podcast for tonight. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time, after the next main series Racetech Cup event, with our next podcast, episode 12 already. We'll try and make sure Pete is out of the country with no internet access, so he doesn't ask too many questions. So it's good night from me, and I'll let the other guys say good night, and then we'll disappear. Good night, everybody.
Clyde, do you want to just mention the change to the Nordschleife event?
No, it's top secret at the moment.
Okay. Yeah.
Good night.
Anyways, good night.